Hi everyone, welcome to my re-review of M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable in the year 2000. So yes, back again with this guy's work, and yes, we have this set here, freeform set, and here is the Blu-ray of Unbreakable. This film, let me tell you, now a re-review here, and of course I did do The Sixth Sense, a couple of days ago, almost a week ago now, of course, and it was one of my last reviews. Not had much time this week, but again, I will be doing more and more. I'll try and do them more frequently. But here we are, back with the second main Shyamalan film here to review. This time it will be full-on spoilers. I'll just say that now. This is probably the case. I will be certainly, these two films are the ones for now that I'll be re-reviewing. The Sixth Sense in this, because I do think, I was more happy with my signs and the Village reviews. They were spoilers reviews as well. So the original ones of these first two ones, were not spoilers reviews. So that's why I definitely wanted to give this one another review. And it's the fourth watch now for me of this film. First seeing it, early 2017, February. I watched it again in that year, and I watched it last year, of course, and this year. So yeah, it's very it's a film that I've watched quite a few times. In a short space of time, you could say. For a reason, of course, and yes, I did increase my rating on The Sixth Sense to a tier S, of course. That's just, that is my favourite Shyamalan film, personally. But yes, this one, I'm not going to say whether it'll get the increase or not. You have to wait till the end of the review. But yes, I thought I want to re-review this film. Once again, this film has just blown me away even more. This is a film that's it just grows on you, even in between watches. For me, it's just like these other original four main films. Of course, I don't quite think personally splits on the level, but I think these ones were, it's just one of the best, very very best director streaks. Certainly four films. I mean, this is the level of Hitchcock, really, almost, at least, with a succession of films like this. It's kind of it's one of the very very best sort of top 10, I would say, director streaks of four films. These are all in my top 100. They are absolute masterworks by a genius, wonderful individual. And I really am in defense of Shyamalan. This film is absolutely mind-blowing, and it's just grown on me even more. It's a tragedy, of course, and that of course contributes to the kind of the way it grows on you, and kind of you feel more and more each time, at least I do. But yes, spoilers, of course, and just by the end, once the credits roll, I was blown away once again, just even more. This film, of course, is a superhero film. Now we can talk about the spoilers, of course. It'd be more interesting to talk about here, because yes, this is one interesting film, and it's one remarkable work. I just really am in awe of the way he wrote and directed this, and it's so original. It's so genius what he's doing here, and it's so key here is the emotion that he brings to this, to a superhero origin story. Of course, you have David Dunn, and he's in the second scene really of the film. You've got the scene, of course, where you see Elijah as a kid, as a newborn, of course, and you realise that sets the tone, of course. His bones are broken. Once the mother has given birth, and this is something that's very dark. It's really really disturbing. The kind of reveal there. The first time I saw it, I was just like, wow. Never seen this in a film. That's something. Oh wow, very dark. And it was so interesting. And of course, it just grabs you, and then the music comes on, the epic music, of course, and you've got the train scene. Bruce Willis, David Dunn, he's in a train crash, East Rail 177, and yes, I just love the direction here, of course, as well. Just the way that Shyamalan, moves the camera, one take, it's just really wonderful. The reactions, of course, to each character at the right point, moving. Perspective, kind of, and yes, it's all timed wonderfully, and I just love how it develops. The complexities of David Dunn, Bruce Willis once again. This is a film that Shyamalan approached Willis once again, with an offer here, and yes, he went for it. After The Sixth Sense, of course, was just one of the, for me, one of the finest films. Very, very successful, and this one was, wasn't quite as successful, but it was. It's definitely, box office didn't do bad. It's just very, very under the radar for many, many years. But now, of course, due as well to the kind of success of Split and Glass in some ways as well, people are realising how good this film is, or at least for me anyway. But yes, this is a film that just is again one of Bruce Willis's best performances. He plays David Dunn, of course, and after the crash, we see him recovering. Well, he didn't really recover. He didn't. Of course, we learn that he didn't get injured from the crash. Everyone else dies. So this is something that is just so compelling here, and it's just you see even some of these scenes after this. It's this constant narrative momentum, just wonderful, masterful character development. You have Spencer Treat Clark playing Joseph, the son, and just the moment when he tries to get his mother and his father, to hold hands, and trying to bring them together as a family, and of course straight after Audrey, the character, his wife, played by Robin Wright, wonderfully as always. Really, she kind of lets go and stuff, and this kind of is kind of so much visual development here. It's such genius storytelling, just adding to this. The complexities, the emotions, the struggles, the tragedy at times of this story, and this family, and the way this film balances up this very, very small and personal kind of situation with this family, very troubled, with this epic scope, this mythic film as a superhero piece. This is something else. It just perfectly balances out the personal and the epic qualities. The spiritual levels this film reaches, just something else. It just really, really is. After about 20 minutes or so, of course, we have Elijah Price, played by Samuel Jackson, who's just, like Willis, among my favourite actors. Of course, they've been in a few films together, of course. Die Hard 3 as well. And yes, they're just both so perfect in this film. Bruce Willis just gives such an emotional performance, such a likeable character once again, just the charm to his character. Then you have Elijah, who is just one of the most compelling and wonderfully, portrayed, just characters in a film. This is one of the very, very best villains for me. But what a complex character, and of course you see some of his, you see a scene, a sequence, with as he, he's about 13 years old, this character of Elijah, and this really, really gets me, emotional every time. It's something that's so, it's so tragic, how that this kid, and eventually adult, has been struggling throughout his life with this condition, never quite knowing what his purpose is, and it's just a wonderful human portrayal of this. Really, really is, and that scene combined with that, it really brings me to tears. That score, the James Newton Howard score, it's just absolutely wonderful. Newton Howard, this is a contender for his very best score. I think The Village is probably the best still, but this is a close second. It's more epic than any of the other ones, really. The score, it really is something. It just the level of emotion that it brings to these, quiet scenes, really, you could say, and that scene, of course, where he gets the present, and I love how Elijah, as a 13-year-old, that moment, when he kind of just tears open the present here, the wrappings and stuff, the packaging is really funny, but yes, he opens it up, and he gets a comic book from his mother, and it really is a wonderful, warm moment here, and it's something that, of course, we learn, you transition to him as an adult, played by Samuel Jackson, and it's something, of course, that is just so, it's so much a part of this film. This is a dissection of comic books, and something that is certainly, you can say, a director, a filmmaker, just adding their own kind of personal, touch to a genre. This is maybe the most unique superhero film actually I've ever seen. It's not like any other superhero film. Not saying it's the very, very best. Maybe that's a DC film or a Marvel film. But yes, this is very, very close, if not the best. But in the sense of just how much it stands out and how much it's kind of certainly a individual's personal take on a you know, kind of a genre. I think this is you know, that kind of pinnacle here that represents the most unique in the genre, and I do think it's probably the best, if not second best, origin superhero story. I think it's just absolutely leagues ahead of so many origin films, and there's a lot of great ones, including Iron Man, you know, Batman Begins. But this is just how you do it perfectly, in my opinion. It really is something else. It just the emotion to this film and the overall the level of writing, the characters, how everything is so much, you know, it's so much a personal story here, and it deals with the tragedy of being, you know, a superhero, the complexities of it, the kind of the joy as well, you know, in the weightlifting scene. That's a wonderful moment, you know, with Joseph as well. A moment of humour, a wonderful scene. It's beautiful, and yes, you've got the really dark and disturbing and tragic cases as well of this whole kind of this, you know, what should be in a lot of superhero films, but you know, this is a bit of both. It's very dark, it's very uplifting, and you know, very spiritual as well, truly spiritual. It's a mythic film that you just, I get so invested in this world, and you know, the way it's kind of a normal, you know, world where superheroes organically live in this world. You know, it's something that doesn't appear to be, you know, as Shyamalan of course intended, you know, to be a superhero film. When I first saw this, I had heard nothing about this at all. I didn't know it was a superhero film. I just knew, well, there was a twist, of course, because, you know, Shyamalan and stuff, really most of his films are. But, you know, I watched it, and, you know, once I'd seen it, I just thought, this is genius. You know, what he set out to do here was very risky, and it's a very different in its approach to its direction, but the way this came together is just really what, you know, what masters can do, you know, when just adding, giving their all to a film project, and this really is something else. The way it is a superhero film, but not quite, you know, in that sense, and the way it kind of, it plays on many things within the genre, but something that definitely feels like a kind of what is the most important thing, you know, in superhero films, and it's something where it comes together in a way that, you know, yes, it's a Shyamalan kind of type of ending where, you know, the twist, most of the twist is kind of given or reveal, you know, at the end, and it's something that just changes the film, becomes this mythic and you know, just beautiful tragedy, you know, and it's something when you rewatch it, it becomes better and better, you know, on repeated viewings. While I loved it the first time round, I was blown away. I thought, once again, another kind of masterpiece from Shyamalan. You know, this is something that has just grown on me more and more since I've seen it, because it's so emotional, it's so rich with you know, character details, and I just find it's one of the most beautiful films ever made. You know, it really is. And yes, you have Elijah, you know, the perfect placement really, just off the 20-minute mark, getting more backstory and more, you know, kind of emotion behind his character, and of course they become friends. You know, this is the beautiful thing about the film, and the complex thing about the film. You know, Elijah and David Dunn, you know, become friends, as kind of kind of spoken about, you know, in the towards the end of the film, by the mother, of course, and it's something that, you know, just you know, really is something that this is such a warm film. It's a wonderful relationship they have, but then once you see it, you know, the ending, you know, it's very thick and complex. You know, it changes everything, but it kind of you know, it just adds to the complexity. I just think, you know, once the credits roll, you know, this becomes one of the most complex relationships between two characters in cinema, and I love so much how, you know, the comments on comic books. I love the scene, of course, where Elijah is, you know, fully introduced as Samuel Jackson, his portrayal, and you know, he's commenting on, you know, this is art, and everything. And he's actually saying about the way that you know, classic kind of tellings of superheroes and everything, you know, kind of how they are superheroes, and the way the features are kind of off. You know, they're not proportionate to the rest of their body. For example, the head, the eyes, and everything. And it's really genius, you know, writing here, and it's so investing, and the way he kind of he says something about this, and you know, you can kind of, I think you can really link this to Samuel Jackson's character, even the hair. You know, it's a bit wacky. You know, it's kind of when you really look about the film and see different details, and actually look at the way Elijah looks in the film. It is, you know, kind of the classic stuff he is talking about here, but the fact that he's, you know, kind of the one presenting this to David Dunn and saying, you know, actually commenting on kind of his character. This is why you don't suspect it as much on the first view, because it's like they're working together throughout the film, and you know, they both bring out, you know, kind of you know, something in one another, both, you know, dark things and beautiful things. Really, it's a very complex film, hard to explain, but you know, the way that Samuel Jackson finally finds his purpose, and you know, it's something that I really felt sympathetic once again for this character. But then the fact, you know, that he's got dark in him as well, and this, you know, in the way, of course, he commits these, you know, he causes these accidents for selfish reasons, you could say. But of course, there is motivations here that are so, you know, complex, and understand. You know, you can understand the motivations so clearly. They're all kind of so. You know, set up so perfectly, and once you see this film, you look back on it, it becomes something where, you know, the motivations are masterfully, you know, shown here, very subtle at times, but it's the way that he wants to find his purpose, you know, and of course, David Dunn finally as well finds his purpose, but the way it's kind of at the end, it's bittersweet, because he has now, you know, allowed this, you know, this villain to kind of emerge in a way, and you know, the way that because of David, you know, Elijah has, you know, has kind of done things as well in a way, and you know, it's the way that as well, you know, David Dunn has saved people in the end as well. That it makes it such a complex film, and I love the writing in this film. It's so genius. You know, every single line is so well thought out. You know, this is something that is to behold. It really is the work of a genius filmmaker, and I just think the level of emotion is so strong. So many moments in this film that just make me cry, you know, and as well, it's an epic film. The moment, of course, where Bruce Willis's character of David comes out of the water, this is epic. Combine that with the score, of course, and you have one of the greatest films ever made, in my opinion. This is something else. The cinematography, as I mentioned in my last review, is absolutely stunning. This is the work of a genius. It really is, and I love how it's kind of, you know, the direction of this film is very interesting in his career. You know, it's something that's not quite comparable to any of his, you know, original main films. It's not like Signs, maybe a bit closer to Sixth Sense in the subtleties. It's not like The Village. This is very different. And if you look closely, it's very much shot like a kind of a lot of the shots kind of appear like they are in a comic book. The kind of panels. This is very interesting, and a lot of the shots, you know, are quite prolonged. And it really is such an artistic the way it's shot, and the way it kind of everything in this film is for a reason. Of course, the clothing as well of Samuel Jackson's character of Elijah, purple, of course. This is something that, you know, it really is, it's so obvious once you've seen it, you know, but you don't quite suspect it, you know, and it's something that is so precise and so kind of masterful, really, in every sense. The way the colours used, the angles, every single thing within the visuals in this film is absolutely stunning. The editing has a wonderful flow. This narrative is just one of the most perfect in cinema. It really is a flawless narrative, you know, and these two characters bringing out more in each other, and once the film ends, you know, you've got both individually perfectly formed, and you've got the work, you know, of a film that really has something that was a dual narrative, but it comes together in the end, and it says something even greater about one's existence, and the way that a villain and a hero, you know, kind of bring out this in each other, you know, and it kind of in quite wonderful ways, but also, you know, very dark and tragic ways. It's such a complex film, really is, and You know, it's got so much uplifting moments in the film. Of course, Joseph and David. You know, this is just one of the warmest portrayals of a kind of father-son relationship in cinema. It's quite similar, of course, to The Sixth Sense. You know, in the way that, you know, that Haley Joel Osment and Bruce Willis's characters are kind of like a father-son relationship, but this is obviously an actual family, and it's just a wonderful film in the way it portrays family life. You know, very, very complex once again. Nothing in this film is one note. It's all so detailed, so layered, that it's just, you know, it really is something else. You know, it's just so well thought out, you know, so perfectly executed. You know, it really is something else. And you know, I think after this rewatch, I can finally say, you know, it really is in so many ways on the level of Signs and The Village. I'm not going to say, you know, my ordering of these three films, but my favourite is The Sixth Sense. So yes, this film doesn't quite get my highest rating, doesn't quite get to that level, but like these other two, you know, Signs and The Village, it's very, very close. Basically, one of my highest, you know, kind of tier one ratings. These three films, you know, and The Sixth Sense, I just think is just a bit better than these in terms of the narrative, the spiritual levels, and the emotion and my connection to the film. But really, this is in many ways just pretty much on the level. You know, it's not far off. You know, it's something that is, as I say, one of the best streaks by a director, you know, ever. And he really, really created one of the finest films ever made with this, and just an absolute masterpiece of cinema. I think as well, you know, one of the themes of this film that is so strong in this is the themes of communication. You know, the way, of course, that David Dunn is trying to reconnect, you know, with his wife Audrey, of course, and it's such a wonderful you know, relationship that is explored in this film, and it just ties into the overall theme of communication and connection, you know, personal connections, and you know, just finding one's place. It all ties into this, but the way, of course, that, you know, the case of you know, David and Audrey, you know, actually finding a connection again, is down to, of course, Elijah's actions, in the way that he creates this, you know, this tragedy with all these people dying. But from that, you know, David kind of finds once again, you know, a connection to his wife. She, of course, wants to start again, and you know, because she's, you know, of course, in life, always the case that when, you know, something happens like this, you think you're about to lose something. You know, you find the value of this, and this is something that is so acutely, you know, judged here. It's so precisely done and so wonderfully explored here. This is absolutely beautiful thing to say here, and of course, they do find, you know, connection again. That is truly wonderful. It's very much, again, you know, a love story in this particular moment, and the way it's so subtle and it's so kind of sincere here. You know, the relationship, of course, between David and Audrey. There's nothing at first that, you know, where it's kind of, it's delaying the satisfaction kind of thing, but then, you know, when it does, you know, kind of come about, and they're a bit better, you know, together and stuff, and you see the hope there. It's truly kind of rewarding to see. But again, you've got that at the back of your mind that this is because of Elijah's actions. Other people have died, but then you've got this kind of you know, this family coming back together again. So it's very, once again, the complexities of this film coming through, and as well, you know, just another thing comes to the head. You know, once the ending credits come, of course, I've rarely seen you know, an ending that is this emotional, and is this precisely and masterfully judged. I think it's just one of the very, very finest endings. Is this the best Shyamalan ending? I think it's probably the second best, just behind The Sixth Sense. All those Signs is just so good. You know, I think the way, of course, that the camera pans and everything, and time has passed, and we finally have the, you know, I'm not going to spoil Signs, but that whole kind of way it comes together then, this satisfying nature. But this is the only one that really is second to The Sixth Sense, I think. The ending to this is epic. You know, it's emotional, but everything in the film comes full circle, and you know, it's the one where every single, you know, cut and the way the music is used, it's just absolutely striking. It really, really is absolutely mind-blowing. You know, one can only hope to achieve, you know, an ending like this. It really is just one of the very, very best. I've rarely seen an ending as good as this. It's just stunning. Everything is wrapped up perfectly, and you have the mix of so many different emotions here. You've got the kind of like, wow, you know, and you kind of nod, and that's how you bring a story together. But then you've got the very, very disturbing, you know, dark nature to the film here. You know, the way that this whole time, you know, Elijah has been, you know, creating these incidents, so he can bring out, you know, the kind of his purpose, and find this hero to his villain. And it's something that, you know, it's just so genius. These superheroes in a very, very grounded way here, you know, in this normal world, you know, this portrayal, you know, of Earth, and it's something that, not does it feel like any other, you know, for a single moment does it feel like any other superhero film, but it makes sense in the nature of the film. All these things, you know, are kind of aspects and, you know, kind of traits that should be, or at least are in a lot of superhero films. And, you know, it's the case that this is very much a superhero film in every way, but again, it's not quite, you know, it's certainly not approached in the way that any other film is. And another thing it kind of done, it does perfectly within, you know, what superhero films do as well, and what the great thing about what they can do, superhero stories, is the way that the kind of normal, you know, people, members of society, just individuals, react to this, you know, kind of these powers, you know, and this is kind of present in two scenes in particular, or two aspects of the film. Of course, the moment, you know, you're kind of in awe of this character of David, and everyone's kind of looking on at him, you know, when he's come out of the hospital, you know, and he's the only one, of course, that survived, and he's getting his photo taken and all this kind of stuff, and people are kind of just in awe of this, and how, you know, how is this something? It's people trying to believe this. How is this happening? And as well, of course, it's through the son, you know, looking up to his father, and you know, something that is so beautifully portrayed in the film. You know, the way that Joseph is, you know, kind of idolizing his dad, you know, and basically, you know, thinking it's cool and everything. And but again, you know, this is something that is so complex, because you have the scene at the dinner table, where they're both, you know, the crying scene, of course, you know, and it's got such an emotion to the film. You know, even that, you know, the way that could have been handled cheaply, but it certainly wasn't in this film by Shyamalan. This is just something else. You know, I think this the way that, you know, throughout the film, Joseph, you know, kind of really looks up to his dad. The comedy involved in this as well is just so great, and of course, you know, when he's saying to his friends and stuff when they're playing, you know, football and stuff, and you know, he's saying, you know, he's basically like kind of bragging to them in a way about his dad. You know, it's something that's it's a pure representation of childhood, and how children react to things like this. You know, and I think that kind of, as well, it kind of, you can kind of channel, you know, the childlike, you know, and certainly for those, you know, I don't know, not everyone likes superhero stuff, you know, films and stuff, but I certainly do. You know, and it's a sense of the childlike wonder that for me has never been lost. You know, I always, you know, kind of look for things like this, and the way that, you know, I love fantasy. I think superhero stuff, you know, it's kind of a way, you know, of fantasy, you know, certainly in cinema, and you know, in comics as well. But it's something that is, it kind of represents our kind of our admiration, our, you know, obsession, and you know, the sense of awe and wonder for superheroes. And this is something that really can be summed up within this relationship, and this character of Joseph, and the way that he's in awe of this, and you know, so are we of, you know, superhero films when they're done right, and just, you know, comics, of course. You know, for me, just fantasy, and kind of, you know, people in cinema who have certain powers, if it's done well, of course, and it's believable. You know, this is something that I really love. You know, this film, as I'm saying, has everything, you know, about superhero films, really, and just the nature of the superhero, the person who has superhuman strength, or, you know, powers, particular skills, and you know, it's something that, you know, brings a real kind of realistic tragedy to it, you know, with Elijah as the villain, but then something that's really cool, and kind of just epic and you know, heroic from Bruce Willis's character of David Dunn, and you know, it's just, there's so much in this film that, you know, in so many ways this is just such a genius film. It really, really is. But the way, of course, that it explores this, and you know, just the way, of course, that it's so felt in the film, it's such a spiritual one, but it's this sense of wonder throughout that is portrayed, that really is one of the many masterful things about this absolute stunning film, you know. And it's just, it's something you have to hand to Shyamalan, the way he's saying something so sincerely, you know. It's not you know, kind of a complete revisionist kind of you know, or rejection of superhero films, because he understands what's key emotionally, and you know, in terms of just characters, you know, and overall themes to many superhero films, or at least actual superheroes, their stories. And it's just, it's so wonderful. It's so unique, and it's so complex, so powerful, and just what strikes me the most, the balance of the personal and the epic scope to the film. It's a mythic film where it creates its own universe, you know, so geniusly. This is something that, you know, it's not a trilogy yet, you know, and you know, kind of, it's not a film that appears as a superhero film, but it just creates over the course, very short runtime. Just look at, you know, Batman Begins and stuff, where it takes, you know, it's a lot longer than this, but this film, you know, just 100 minutes, and it's already achieved something that a whole universe is set up here. It's so powerful, and it's so present, and so it's something you feel so much and you believe in. At least I did personally. That it's something to behold. This is just simply masterful storytelling. This is how you tell a story, how you bring something to the screen that is your vision purely. You know, this is something that is completely original and completely personal and sincere. And this is, you know, it's such an inspirational film in terms of filmmaking, but also just, you know, what it says about life. And I think as well, what strikes me in the way it's sympathetic for the villain is that he is, you know, he's got conditions, you know, disabilities here, you know, where his bones break easily, and it really brings me to tears at times how he struggles so much, especially as a kid, to kind of fit in, and you know, as well, just feel safe, you know, in a sense, to just go outside, for example. And that relationship between him and his mother really enhances that. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff. But the way that it's so, it's kind of sad and everything, but again, it's kind of you know, something where in the end he does find his purpose, and you know, whether or not, you know what you can say about that he is, you know, our villain of this universe, but he has found his purpose, and the way that, you know, he kind of brings out something in David is so you know, because it's not just you know, it seems like it's not just for selfish reasons. It really isn't, I don't feel, but it kind of is at the same time. Such a complex film, so layered, multi-layered, and so meaningful. It's just an inspirational film, and the way it leaves with these two friends, you know, quite dear friends in the end, you know, found a friendship, found a kind of a warmth together, you know, a particular relationship that is very charming. The jokes that, you know, Elijah and him make together throughout the film, especially in the first half, and then in the end they part ways. The real power of that, you know, really comes through in the end. The way they part ways, and just you know, they are of course now against each other. It's something else. You know, it's the perfect way to give backstory, real exposition between a villain and a superhero, and you know, it's something else where they kind of were in the same boat, you know, struggling with what's quite, you know, going on in their lives, kind of thing, and finding their purpose together. That's the thing. They both help each other, but then it ends, you know, with them parting ways, and you know, eventually, of course, you know, you find out that Elijah's put in the institution, which of course we learn of course about in Glass, and you know, that's such an interesting film as well, and very good stuff there. I really like that film, and yes, but for this film, for me, it's the finest in the trilogy, hands down. It's just the absolute superior masterpiece, you know, within the trilogy. It really is something exceptional. To follow up The Sixth Sense, you know, a film like this, you know, is something else. Completely understand how people can call this the best Shyamalan, which is quite often the case now, and I certainly see it. You know, I really, really do. As I say, it's not too far off The Sixth Sense. I just think that's a bit purer, a bit more, definitely a lot more emotional for me. I connect with it more, and I think it's overall just a bit better, you know, overall. But this film, you know, is no kind of, it's not a pale in comparison, no doubt. You know, this is an exceptional piece of cinema. It's an absolute masterwork, a true masterpiece, and of course, it has to get the same rating I gave it last time, but a very, you know, an extremely high, 100% plus tier 1. This film, you know, it is just genius stuff. It's one of the most you know, emotional films I've ever seen. Within every single frame, there is something that Shyamalan is saying. He's saying it so clearly, but in a subtle way at times as well. It's such a kind of you know, endearing film, one that, you know, you can just find so many details in, and I do personally feel it's one of the very finest works in cinema. You know, and once again, this has grown on me even more. Of course, I wanted to do this review again because, you know, it really is quite close to, certainly on the level to The Village and Signs for me now. I do really think that, and I'm not going to say my ranking of these three, but The Sixth Sense is my very favourite. But these three, you know, including Unbreakable now, very close in their own ways. Something else, this film. I am in awe of this. I'm inspired. It's a wonderful tale of a family, of two kind of struggling individuals as well, who find their purpose, which, you know, of course, David, while he finds out he can do good, he also, unfortunately, you know, kind of finds out the tragedy and, you know, the kind of complexities of, you know, Elijah and what he's done at the same time. But, you know, he's rekindled his relationship with his wife Audrey, and but at the same time, as I say, you know, there's this kind of real complexity and disturbing nature of what has happened, you know, involving Elijah, and this is something that is just stunning to behold. For me, it really is a real work of art, this film. You know, what it says about the genre, but what it does, not just to criticise, you know, or kind of revise, you know, a lot of the kind of things in superhero films. It's something that, you know, it's just, it understands what is so important, you know, is these pure emotions, the level of humanity, and, you know, what people, you know, kind of, what they are under the superhero, or the kind of persona, and that is humans, and it deals with this throughout the entire film, constant scenes involving humanity, something they're saying about something about life, and it's so pure, this film. The scenes of Elijah when he's, you know, a younger kid, 13-year-old, of course. It's just a beautiful scene. You know, it really is wonderful, so emotional. You know, it's something that really adds such a kind of a level to this character. You know, the sympathetic natures of this villain. You know, we must say he's a villain, and he's done bad. But of course, you see the sympathy for him as well. How can you not? This character, this individual who has, you know, he's got disabilities. He you know, he's finding it hard in life. He's got these conditions, and he's isolated. You know, while you've got the warmth of the relationship between him and his mother, he's isolated. He's not, you know, really got any friends and stuff. But you know, he is a villain. So this is, you know, what I'm trying to say here is one of the most complex and you know, multi-layered and masterfully developed villains in cinema. He really is, you know, in some ways just as good, you know, some of the very top villains for me, you know, in superhero films. Hint, of course, the big one there. But you know, this film, you know, it doesn't need to be compared. But I do think, for the record, it's one of the top 5 probably superhero films ever made, and it's some film. It really is a true masterpiece of cinema. Quite close to the TRS rating, but got to draw a line somewhere. It's not quite on that level, we'll say, The Sixth Sense, but it's certainly an absolute masterpiece, and one that is so rich in its emotions. You know, the way it brings me to tears at times, the way it's so genius. You know, it's the work of a genius. You can't call Shyamalan a director who is bad, you know, overall. You know, yes, you may not like all his films, but surely, you know, you watch a film like this, or The Sixth Sense, and, you know, some of the others, but, you know, these two, I guess, are the ones that the most people love, or say are good films, or great films. You know, I don't know how he can be called a bad, you know, an awful director. He really is, for me, one of the best directors of all time, despite, you know, his ones that, you know, aren't ones I connect to as much. You know, like After Earth, I don't like that film, and The Last Airbender is not bad for me, but it's not quite, you know, him, certainly not. But he really is a wonderful filmmaker. Once again, thank you, Shyamalan, for this wonderful, wonderful work, and a great, you know, great admiration for this filmmaker, for this individual. Once again, you know, this is, you know, one of the cases, the strongest cases for him to be, you know, just a work, you know, a work of genius here, a stroke of genius. This guy writing and directing, and you know, I love the cameo as well. Very convincing drug dealer there. You know, he plays in the stadium. Very funny stuff. But yes, you know, I love the writing. I love everything about the film. The editing is just so genius. The way the narrative, you see the flashbacks, of course. It's just so genius, so masterful in his storytelling. Not a single moment where the direction is not perfect. It's shot like a comic book, quite subtly at times. It's got the use of colours to represent, you know, the villains, you know, of comic books, and it's got the character motivations that are so organically and wonderfully built up in the film, and the reveal. You know, that's not a twist. I don't call it a twist. It's a reveal about what this character has been doing, you know, throughout this film, and the reasoning behind it. It's all brought together in that final, you know, sequence, which just hits you. It hits you with so much, you know, the first time round, but then again, every revisit, you know, is kind of just better and better, and one that, you know, it's one of the most emotional and epic films, you know, of all time. It really is a mythic film, a stunning, awe-inspiring, shiver-worthy film. It really does. It gives me the shivers, you know, in the use of music, the character moments, you know, epic stuff. It really is. Just, it's so satisfying, but again, it's got this underlying tragedy to the film, and, you know, it really is one of the most wondrous works within the genre. This is what a superhero film, you know, can be, and it really, I think, in its own unique ways, it could be the greatest or purest representation, despite it being completely different to any other superhero film ever made. It could be the purest representation, stripped down, of what a superhero, you know, film, you know, should be. Maybe not should be, but what superheroes are, and how they're linked to us humans. You know, the level of humanity underlying, you know, these superheroes. It shows what, you know, what you can do for good, and as well the villains, of course, as well. You know, everything in the film, you know, is kind of it's so wonderfully built up, and as I say, that ending is just one of the finest endings in cinema. The performances, Samuel Jackson, you know, that reaction shot at the end, the ending shot, is that the finest reaction shot from Samuel Jackson? Even better than anything in Pulp Fiction. You know, very, quite possibly, really is. It's just one of his finest roles. Robin Wright is wonderful, very subtle performance. She is so great in the film, and Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis is just so good. One of my favourite actors, and yes, Spencer as well. Such a great performance from him, and yeah, everyone involved. James Newton Howard, the score. Wow, it's really something else. It really is emotional and epic stuff. Awe-inspiring, this film. It really is in every sense, and it's just, you know, it really is something overwhelming, with beauty, with emotion, and you know, with a spiritual feel. The way the film elevates to such a purity and a profound status, and it just sits among the very best films for me ever made, personally. I know it is kind of divisive, but my personal review here, I do think it's untouchable, you know, kind of thing for me. Unbreakable is untouchable. It really is. You know, it's something else, and as I say, you know, this is a true you know, kind of member of my top 100 films, no doubt. You know, like these other best Shyamalan films for me. Wow, such a film, such a real masterpiece here, and you know, I think just what a film to follow up The Sixth Sense with. What a film, a true masterpiece. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. I am moved. I am, you know, I'm awe-inspired. I am, you know, getting behind the weightlifting scene. What an epic, joyous scene. Funny, you know, he uses humour to ground the film. He does everything right. He ticks the boxes like a Spielberg ticks the boxes. He really, really does. He does everything right in this film. He really does. And yes, there is just no doubt this is one of the finest films ever made for me. Not everyone connects to the film, but I personally do on every single level. And it's really, in many ways, maybe not, you know, the best, but in many ways the kind of ultimate superhero film. So yes, thanks for watching my review.